I was working with a company once who was experiencing a major decline in its revenue. In fact, year over year, sales were down by about 25%, and I could tell you it was super painful for the business. Now, a lot of this was out of the control of my client. More on that later because there is some responsibility here. But let's just say there were some major macro trends that were impacting sales, including a shift in consumer preferences and a major shakeup in the industry. So in order to overcome these challenges and to seek out solutions, my client decided to go meet with the distributor. So it was me, the CEO, and the president of operations, and we went to the distributor's office and we met with their team to try to uncover some tactics and strategies that could be pursued in order to overcome this declining revenue problem. So here we were sitting in their office and we were showing them the numbers. We had graphs, charts showing the decline in revenue. We were talking about all different types of things that were impacting the business. And then we put it back on them saying, okay, what can you do? Because you're responsible for pushing sales through your channels, but what can we do together in order to fix this problem? Now, the distributor threw out some ideas. They were pretty basic and they were all about promotions and doing these other sales tactics that sure would probably move the needle, but not to the effect of fixing a 25% sales declining gap, all right? So we sit through this meeting and we're talking, blah, 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 going back and forth. And at the end, my client, the CEO, said to the VP of sales of the distributor, he said, okay, who's killing it out there in the market? Who's doing really well? In other words, who's overcoming these problems that the industry is facing? Because this was an industry-wide problem. And the distributor said, okay, well, yeah, this company, they're doing a great job. This business over here, they're seeing success, and so on and so forth. And we said, okay, great, thanks for the meeting. And we left. Now, as we walked outside, the president, the CEO, and I, we huddled up to debrief on the meeting. And it was during that time that a giant light bulb went off. Not just for me, but for my client, when we were talking about those who were successful. And the key ingredient of these successful companies was that they chose a market focus and position that would allow them to win in this existing environment. And that's what I want to talk about right now is the strategy for the now is so critical. The same thing is true when I was working in construction. Our business was experiencing a major decline because retail sales in the retail industry were going down the toilet, and that's where we were focused. That's where all our projects came from, was from the retail sector. So we tried to pivot and get into healthcare, but the ramp up of breaking through a new industry is pretty long. And so therefore we found ourselves scrambling. And the same thing was true with this client. And outside of the building, during our huddle, we were talking about, okay, yeah, years ago, decisions were made that put us in this market focus and position. And now the company was paying the price. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about strategy for the now. And oftentimes in business, we just get in the groove of just going out there and busting out work. And oftentimes we believe that through just sheer grit and heroics, we can become successful. But this is where strategy plays such a crucial role in businesses. And trust me, I've seen businesses of all different sizes across multiple industries in my career, and I know which ones are positioned to succeed and those that are not. Now it comes down to strategy. And it's interesting because sometimes I'll work with business owners and yeah, Steve, we don't really have a strategy, we need your help. And I'm like, no, you do have a strategy, all right? It may just not be formalized, but you're following some type of strategy. It's just the strategy isn't working. So when it comes to strategy for the now, it's all about making decisions about where you're going to compete, how you're going to compete, and then ultimately how you're going to win. Now, I use a blueprint with my clients that walks them through this framework and helps them to explore strategic options. And this has been very helpful because I'm all about iteration. You put in place a blueprint, right? And this is your intended strategy. And then you go out there in the market and guess what? Your emergent strategy comes about. And then you make adjustments along the way. Strategy is not about prediction, right? If I was doing prediction strategy back before COVID, I would probably be bankrupt right now because I'd be selling a bunch of strategy to my clients. And if it was based on predictions about what the future was going to do, then yeah, they would be like, what the heck, Steve? So that's why I don't get into prediction strategy where I pull reports and gather data from a macro and micro level to try to say, okay, here, let's be predictive about the future and then position yourself here because this is how things are going to unfold. Sure, it's helpful to get industry reports and understand what's coming down the pipeline here, but in reality is nobody can foresee what the future is all about. So instead, it's about making sound decisions about where a company is going to position itself and how it's going to win in that position. And then it's tying strategy with finance together in order to create value. And so going back to this huddle outside of this office, the CEO of the company said, look, where we made decisions years ago to go down the path of pursuing sales instead of marketing. He said, look, we focused on, B2B sales and building out that sales force, which wasn't a bad strategy. But in the process, they ignored the most important thing, which was market focus and position. And that's really hard to fix. Let me illustrate this by one more story here, and then we'll wrap up. When I was running my landscape business, I had no clue what I was doing. I just went out there and I worked really hard every single day. Talk about just relying on sheer grit and hard work. That was me. That's what I was doing. And I positioned my business in a way where we were going after the high-end design build market. So we were out there building pools and water features and putting greens and outdoor kitchens and all these high-end amenities for these super wealthy people. And during the time, it was great because the economy was booming, the housing market was going crazy, and we were very successful. But I ignored a big part of my business, and that was market focus and position. We were so focused on this niche that we ignored other revenue streams that would protect us in the event that the market turned, which the market's always going to turn. So instead of getting into landscape maintenance, that was recurring revenue that would get us through recessionary times, we just doubled down on this part of the business. And we didn't look forward into the future. We were just focused on the here and now, and we were living hand to mouth. There's so many leads coming in the door and so many opportunities right before us. We didn't pause and think about our strategy and our market focus and position. We just went down this path like so many companies do. And guess what? When the economy changed in 2008 with the housing crisis, in 2009, it was really painful for our business. And we try to scramble and we try to get into some maintenance contracts to make up for some lost revenue, but it was too late at that time. And so the same thing is true with so many businesses that I work with over and over again. They find themselves in positions that take years to develop and to pivot out of. So with this client, standing outside of the distributor's office in a huddle saying, yeah, we should have done this and we really need to focus in on it. Yes, they do need to focus in on it, but it's going to take years to put themselves in a new position in the market and to spend all this money on marketing to build the brand. It takes years to build a brand. And so I guess that's my advice for you and what I want to encourage you today with, what I want to leave you with, I guess, is to focus on the strategy right now that will put you in a position of strength and resilience going into the future. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. Like, look, we're all busy. Look at my schedule. I have so many back-to-back meetings that sometimes it's hard to stop and think about the future and plan. But strategy doesn't have to be overly complicated. If you have a blueprint in place, which helps you define your market focus and position, your competitive behavior, the resources you'll need, among other things, and then you define out your initiatives, your actions, your results, and you go out there and execute, and you're measuring this every single month in your financial strategy review meetings. These are all the things that I'm talking about in these episodes. But when you have a process in place to develop a strategy and then go execute upon it, you'll find yourself in a position of empowerment instead of scrambling at the last minute trying to change your market focus and position, which is really hard to do. So that's what I'd encourage you right now to do, is to focus on strategy for the now, right? Strategy for the now for your business, which will position you for success in the future. Because like I said, it's really difficult to try to switch your position in a market and to build a brand at the last minute when you start seeing revenue declining. So those are my words of encouragement. That's all I have for today's episode. Thanks for joining, and until next time, take care of yourself. Cheers.